Good morning, everyone. It's February 23rd, 2020. I'm Eric. How's everyone doing this morning? I hope you're all well. Alright, so as you can see, I have a lot of tabs open. So we should get into it. The other day I did a video and I mentioned the fourth turning. I didn't really get into any detail, so this will be the first part of my video. Then we'll work through the tabs from left to right. This comes from internationalman.com. It's on Zero Hedge, and it is regarding the fourth turning. I'm not going to read the whole article, but I will hit some of the key points. The fourth turning, as I understand it anyhow, is when a society loses faith in their institutions, from political to religious and everything in between. And this is occurring in the United States, among other places. We have less and less people going to church. Not that that's a bad thing. I don't think it is, because, churches are one of these places where predatory people like to hide. So the first question, and probably the most important one in my opinion, is asked by International Man to Doug Casey. The economic, political, social, and cultural situation seems to have become increasingly volatile in the United States and more broadly in the West. Is it a unique situation or part of a reoccurring historical cycle? And he explains that it is not a straight line, but cycles that occur. And the same thing goes for our nature. We have cycles in space, which create cycles on Earth, which create climate changes and sometimes extinctions. That's just the way it is. But he recommends, Doug Casey said he read Strauss and Howell's first book, Generations, and this book came out in 1992. And he recommends these books, but history's best, history is best seen as cyclical rather than a straight line progress to some preordained end. The Marxists and the Abrahamic religions see it this way, but then Ecclesiastes has its famous quote that there's nothing new under the sun. Plato in the Republic talks about how the younger generation, and we're talking 4th century BC, can't stand up to the moral values of their forefathers. But they can and have. Older people have always thought that the younger generation wouldn't quite measure up. In recent American history, you'll recall the younger generation were beatniks in the 50s, the hippies in the 60s, and the yuppies in the 80s. So it's a passing parade. Older people have a tendency to think the world is going downhill. Nothing new there. But there's always a rebirth. Niccolo Machiavelli in his Florentine history, said, "Virtues give birth to tranquility, tranquility to leisure, leisure to disorder, disorder to ruin, and similarly from ruin order is born, from order virtue, from virtue glory and good fortune." The bottom line is that societies arise from poverty through moral strength, and that brings them prosperity. But that prosperity brings on arrogance, and the arrogance brings on laziness, which brings on weakness and moral decline. Then they're reduced to a condition of slavery and poverty again. Change is the only constant except for human nature, or except in human nature. Let me see here. The U.S. has gone from being a non-interventionist to now having many hundreds of bases around the world and trying to give orders to every other country in the world. That kind of arrogance always ends badly. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something personal. When I was well off, and look, it was not from legal means. It was from selling pot, large amounts of it. I had a good long streak of success, of going under the radar. And during this streak, that very thing happened to me, what they're talking about. I became arrogant. And that was towards the end. When you become arrogant, you're asking for problems. It is only when you are humble and accept the notion that you can, everything can be jerked from underneath of you at a moment's notice. When you do this, when you shed your arrogance, less bad things happen to you. When you're not arrogant, you put in the dirty work yourself. You know, I think wars would probably be a lot different if the presidents and the kings and these people actually had to fight in them themselves. Don't you? I mean, the Viking kings went to war with their people, right? Somewhere along the line, it became acceptable for the king to hide out in his castle and bark orders at everyone. And this kind of arrogance in leadership always ends badly. So the fourth turning is happening. Cultural Marxists are now totally in control of the U.S. educational system and have been for a couple of generations. That's absolutely the case in colleges and universities, but also in high schools and even the grade schools. Kids are being taught to be socialist, eco-warriors, social justice warriors, and woke from an early age. and it's really serious. So one of the reasons why I homeschool is because I did not want any of these flaky, moronic teachers implanting stupid ideas like socialism into the minds of my children. And by the way, the United States is already a socialist country, and it has been for quite some time. And with each new social enforcement institution, it becomes more socialist and more socialist. So don't live in the delusion that you live in a republic or a democracy, because it's not any of these things. It is a socialist nation, among other things. Okay. He says that International Man asks, where are we in the generation cycle now, or generational cycle, rather? So, Strauss and Howe took a cyclical point of view over the course of about 80 years, 4 generations. To very briefly summarize their theory, there are 4 turnings: a high, an awakening, an unraveling, and a crisis. And we've seen our high, right? And people, a lot more people are aware or awakened now. And we are witnessing both the unraveling and the crisis as I make this video. So, we've been undergoing the unraveling where old values fall apart. Next, Strauss and House predicted a crisis starting about 2015, which tests the very existence of the society, or at least the way it's run. They go beyond seeing generations as being simply liberal or conservative. According to Strauss and Howe, there are 4 generational archetypes that last over a cycle of 80 years, 20 years per generation, corresponding to the turnings. So I do recommend you gain an understanding about this, because it is literally what we can do to break the cycle. Well, what we can do to stop all of this is break the cycle, right? We have to remember all of these things. We have to remember that when we become arrogant, bad things happen. We have to remember, if we're going to have leaders, we can't allow them to become that powerful, because that power leads to that arrogance, and that arrogance leads to our downfall as a whole people. Let's move on. And you're going to see why people are losing faith in institutions along the way here. All right. Europe's anti-science plague descends on Africa. This comes from James George. I don't know, man. Some of these names I don't know. But it's via the EuropeanScientist.com. That's some shit that I can't pronounce there. European activists are putting lives at risk in East Africa, turning a plague of insects into a real prospect of widespread famine. Well, they see an opportunity to do exactly what they've wanted to do for quite some time, and that is rid the planet of millions, if not billions, of people. The fast breeding desert locust has invaded Kenya, Somalia, and Ethiopia, creating a state of emergency. And the pest recently landed the Djibouti, Eritrea, I don't know, Oman, Yemen, and swarms have also struck Tanzania and Uganda. They won't stop on their own. According to the Food Agricultural Organization, this is the worst situation in 25 years. Now keep in mind, we have these ports, right, with rotting food in them in China. And keep in mind, our warehouses and our own ports are being depleted as this viral outbreak occurs, and then you add to it a locust plague. Things look pretty bad, guys. These beasts consume every plant in their path, leaving behind devastated croplands and pastures, and can migrate up to 150 kilometers a day. They've already covered 1 million hectares in Kenya with no signs of slowing down. Now, somebody said in my comment section that these things can be engineered, and I agree. They can breed these insects and then release them from a plane to wreak havoc on a continent. The human toll is staggering. 25 million people have been left hungry by Oxfam's estimate. Yet, instead of rallying around African nations in this time of great peril, more EU-funded NGOs have descended on the Kenyan parliament to demand that the government disarm itself in the battle against locusts. You heard that right. They want the Kenyan government to outlaw the pesticides used to fight the locust, the only effective tool that can stop these insects and prevent the crisis from spiraling out of control. And I'm not a big fan of these pesticides, but you got to do what you got to do. If it's necessary, then it's necessary. According to experts, a pesticide like fentanyl will play a key role in eliminating locusts in Kenya and other African countries. Properly applied, it can thwart the desert locust swarms, but Kenya lacks the supplies it desperately needs. In quotes, the pesticide is very effective. It kills locusts within 40 minutes to 6 hours of spraying, said Salad Tutana, the chair of Northern Kenya Locust Control Coordination Team. Now, when they go to a place and deplete the resources at that place, they go somewhere else, right? So, by nipping it in its ass in the early stages, we can save a whole bunch of food, but, the NGOs there, the European Union, they're not interested in saving people. they're interested in killing people. More planes are needed for spraying. Currently, there are only 5 planes being used to spray the available insecticides. So, yeah. Desperation in affected communities is real, and more needs to be done. In quotes, we have resigned ourselves to crude methods like shouting, burning tires, blowing whistles to chase these insects away. But here, too, the NGO activists are trying to dictate policies that will allow the insect plagues to continue unchecked. My first question is, what the fuck are these NGOs doing in Africa in the first place? And who the fuck are they to demand any country do anything? I mean, who are these people? Anyway, I thought I would bring this up too, because we're about to have some pretty hard times, guys. I mean, pretty hard. And again, I do recommend all of you do your best to prevent your own starvation now. So there's that. You add to this the other stuff going on, the stuff in our own country, like floods and droughts and fires. Doesn't look good, does it? Yeah. Okay. The human race could go extinct. J.P. Morgan fearmongers climate change impact and leak report. So this is a new report from J.P. Morgan, and it was leaked this week. Risky business, the climate and the macroeconomy, warns climate change poses a significant macroeconomic risk to the world economy and could result in a catastrophic event. In quotes, the response to climate change should be motivated not only by central estimates of outcomes, but also by the likelihood of extreme events. We cannot roll out catastrophic outcomes when human life as we know it is threatened, the report advised its top clients. Now, if these cycles are truly driven by the sun and other phenomenon, gamma ray bursts, these kinds of things, which they are, what is it that these people think they're going to do about it? How are they going to stop volcanoes from putting the CO2 into the atmosphere? How do they plan on doing that? Are they willing to not use giant ships and personal aircraft, and are they willing to give up their own SUVs and all these things? I venture to say that, yes, the air would be cleaner, okay? No doubt about it. If people stopped driving and stopped using gasoline, oil, yes, the air would be cleaner. There's no denying that. But would it really affect the outcome of a long-established cycle that happens over and over again? I don't think so. I don't think that we can stop the cycle in this case, because it's a matter of things we have no control over, such as the sun. Something will have to change at some point if the human race is going to survive. And they're right. But what has to change isn't our carbon emissions. What has to change is our willingness to be led around by morons. You know, morons like Barack Obama, like Donald Trump, morons like George Bush, both Bushes. And until we shed ourselves of this willingness to be led around by these morons, like, I don't know, donkeys with carrots on a stick, the human race is in peril. As long as we, as the human race, continue to be led around by these morons, we are in peril until we stop accepting the law enforcement and prison industrial complex, the military industrial complex, until we stop supporting these institutions, then are at more peril than we are with fucking climate change. But basically what they want to do is a global carbon tax to be introduced immediately to curb climate change and prevent an epic meltdown of the global economy, the economists warn. But what they're actually doing is introducing what they call green bonds and unlimited fiscal deficits and so on and so forth. And this would be orchestrated all by all the central banks, governments, and financial elites. So, do you really trust it if these types of individuals are, orchestrated by, or the ones orchestrating it, rather? So, I don't think so. I don't think it's a good idea to trust any of these people because, after all, the U.S. is a world leader in bioweapons research, production, and use against mankind. Right? This one is by Gary Bennett via LouRockwell.com. Those that prevent disease and expose virus creation are heroic, but those that create and purposely spread disease and virus are inhuman. Given the history of the United States government and its military-industrial complex concerning biological and germ warfare, the use of these agents against large populations, and the desire to create agents that are race-specific strains, these powerful entities have become compassionateless purveyors of death to the innocent. Man-made viruses meant for warfare, whether for economic destruction, starvation, or mass death, are workings of the truly evil among us. Predation at this level is relegated to those in power. A president, for example, could give the order to wipe out millions due to his inability to control a problem he caused and perpetuated, and then lay blame on the victims. And we see this very, very frequently, the blaming the victim. Who would ever have believed that modern warfare could be more brutal, more torturous, more painful, and more harmful to innocents, especially children, than past atrocities committed in war? Memories of millions sent to their deaths fighting in trenches, cities obliterated by atomic bombs, entire countries destroyed, and millions purposely left to starve in order to appease some tyrant or elected leader. Once I thought that nuclear war would signal the end of life as we know it, but considering modern warfare and technology, I now think that uncontrolled and deadly viruses may consume the world population as one after another poisons are released as acts of hidden war. Remember, the very first video I did about COVID-19, I couldn't have hit the nail on the head more precisely if I tried. Now, just think about this for a moment. If our government or CIA, if they released a bioweapon on China, what do you think China's going to do? The new coronavirus, COVID-19, is one in a line of many that were not just likely, but most certainly produced by man in laboratories, is affecting almost exclusively the Chinese at this point, which now it's really beginning to spread. Interestingly, in the past, the U.S. universities and NGOs went to China specifically to do illegal biological experimentation, and this was so egregious to Chinese officials that forcible removal of these people was the result. Harvard University, one of the major players in this scandal, stole the DNA samples of hundreds of thousands of Chinese citizens, left China with those samples, and continue illegal bio research in the United States. It is thought that the U.S. military, which puts a completely different spin on the conversation, had commissioned the research in China at the time. And this is more than suspicious. The U.S. has already, according to this article at Global Research, had a massive biological warfare program since at least the 1940s, but has used toxic agents against this country and others since the 1860s. This is no secret, regardless of the propaganda spread by the government and its partners in criminal bioweapon research and production. As of 1999, the U.S. government had deployed its chemical and biological weapons arsenal against the Philippines, Puerto Rico, Vietnam, China, North Korea, Laos, Cambodia, Cuba, Haitian boat people, and our neighbor Canada, according to this article at Counterpunch. Of course, U.S. citizens have been used as guinea pigs many times as well, and exposed to toxic germ agents and deadly chemicals by government. Keep in mind that this is a short list, as the U.S. is well known for also using proxies to spread its toxic chemicals and germ agents, such as happened in Iraq and Syria. Since 1999, there have been continued incidences of several different viruses. most of which are presumed to be man-made, including the current coronavirus that is affecting China today. I will say that it is not just the U.S. that is developing and producing biowarfare agents and viruses, but many developed countries around the globe do so as well. And again, when these institutions finally collapse, and they're going to collapse, we cannot allow for them to be resurrected. None of them. Consider that a deadly virus created by the U.S. and used against another country was found out and verified in retaliation. That country or others decided to strike back with other toxic agents against America. Where would this end? And over time, how many billions could be affected in such a scenario? That's what I'm saying here. And Russia came out and said that they thought the United States was responsible for releasing a bioweapon in China. Let's move on now. When U.S. hospitals and military publicly brace for a pandemic, you should pay attention. And this is from Daisy Luther at Organic Prepper. Now, I will hit the key points in this one and move on because I still have a few open here. If you trust the numbers coming out of China, I don't, neither do I. It appears that they're getting their coronavirus epidemic contained, which they're not. Yesterday, they reported the lowest numbers of new cases in ages, with 349 newly confirmed patients, in a dramatic drop of more than 1,300 fewer cases than Tuesday. Do you believe that? I'm not in Zunet. Again, I don't know, man. Fuck these damn names. But it's an official government propaganda news outlet for China. NHC spokesperson Mi Feng made the remarks at a press conference in Beijing Wednesday, citing the epidemic data in the province over the past week. The daily count of newly cured and discharged cases in Hubei, excluding the capital of Wuhan, has exceeded the number of newly confirmed cases for 4 consecutive days as of Wednesday. See, but if they include the capital city of Wuhan, which I don't know why they would exclude that, this is not the case. He also noted that the number of newly confirmed cases has decreased significantly since February 13th in areas besides Wuhan. And there is plenty of evidence that China has been fucking with its numbers all along, so it's difficult not to take this good news with a grain of salt. Particularly when hundreds of potentially infected people disembarked the Diamond Princess yesterday to make their ways home to 50 different countries via a wide variety of public transportation options. And let's not forget, by the way, it's no longer a 21-day incubation. They found a patient who had it for 27 days before showing symptoms. Long incubation period. And when our own government is busily and visibly preparing for the potential of a massive outbreak in the United States, we didn't even see these kinds of preparations when we were being warned by the CDC to get ready for an Ebola outbreak in 2014. And we dodged the bullet on that one. CDC warned American hospitals, she kind of messed this sentence up. CDC warned American hospitals to prepare. Anyone who is a prepper knows that medical items like gloves, N95 masks, and other PPE are in short supply right now, and hospitals are also concerned about shortages. The CDC issues a warning last week, in quotes, "This is the time to open up your pandemic plans and see that things are in order," said Dr. Ann Schuchat, a top official of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. For instance, she continued, healthcare providers need to plan for a surge at a hospital, the ability to provide personal protective equipment for your workforce, the administrative controls, and so forth that you might put in place in a healthcare setting. So they're expecting it here. And by the way, many hospitals are not bracing for impact. So when the hospitals and military are bracing for a pandemic, you should probably get prepared yourself. Just saying. Good idea. All right. Researchers find 61.5% of coronavirus patients with severe pneumonia won't survive. According to a study published in The Lancet on Friday, patients who are especially vulnerable to severe COVID-19 infections, a group that includes the very old, the very young, and of course, that very young, that's kind of in the air, and those with co-occurring conditions die at a higher rate from COVID-19 than they did from SARS and MERS. A study of 52 critically ill adults at Wuhan Jinyangtan Hospital found that 61.5% of patients requiring hospitalization and intense monitoring ended up becoming non-survivors. So, if you have a chronic condition already, whether you're Chinese, Caucasian, or Asian, Caucasian, or African descent, you're in trouble. You should stay out of public the best you can. I'm not really sure if that would work, but it's the smart thing to do. Korea reports 123 new coronavirus cases. Italy declares state of emergency, virus updates. And I'm only going to hit the summary here. This is getting to be a little bit long. Korea reports 123 new cases, 1 new death. Italy announces 79 cases, declares national emergency. Northern Italy put on lockdown. Japan cases triple in a week to 121. Japan confirms seriously ill patient in Tokyo. Hubei reports daily numbers, which were Chinese scientists find virus in urine. Experts propose 27-day quarantine, says 14 days likely not long enough. Cases outside China go exponential. 32 UK and European citizens arrived back in UK on evac flight. Outbreak reported in South Korean psychiatric ward. WHO team visits Wuhan, will give Monday press conference. Iran reports 10 new cases. Deaths climb to 6. San Diego says 200 under medical observation. Young woman infected 5 relatives without ever showing symptoms. South Korea cases surged 8-fold in 4 days to 433. Now, let me ask a question here. How is it one country eightfold, but the other ones aren't reporting numbers like that? It kind of makes me wonder, doesn't it? So, they're not even counting Hubei province for some reason, and that's just stupid. If people are sick and dying there, they're sick and dying there, they should be counting them. And this is one of the reasons why people are losing faith in their so-called institutions. It's because they're lying sacks of shit in every country, pretty much. It begins. Samsung shutters smartphone factory in South Korea as after virus outbreak. South Korea now emerges as the next hotspot of this outbreak, and now they are wanting to close down, or have closed down, Samsung. On Friday, South Korea reported 142 new confirmed cases, up a mind-boggling 70% in just one day. Now, how does that happen? And why aren't the other nations in this same boat? Or are they, and they're just being underreported? Probably the most likely thing. As I said at the beginning, they don't want people all at the same time running out to the stores and buying up a bunch of shit. On Saturday, Samsung Electronics reported that a COVID-19 case was confirmed at its smartphone factory in southeastern city of Gumi, resulting in a complete shutdown of the entire plant. Another factory bites the dust. Come on, computer. This one is at shtfplan.com from Mike Adams. China invokes Holocaust horrors, 40 mobile incineration ovens deployed in Wuhan. China invokes Holocaust horrors as 40 mobile incineration ovens are deployed in Wuhan, labeled for disposal of animal corpses. Remember 13 days ago when we warned that cremation vans were running 24/7 in Wuhan, while the crematoriums were backlogged with piles of dead bodies stacked in the cremation queues? Now China has brought in 40 mobile incineration ovens to burn and destroy what the Chinese government calls medical waste. And there are lots of animals dying over there from the the spraying. So each incinerator can burn up to 5 tons of material per day, which equates to about 16 dead human bodies or large animal bodies per unit per day, multiplied by 40 incinerator ovens, which would now have been deployed. This adds the capacity to burn up to 640 human bodies per day. So there's that. If you haven't seen this lady, you should check her out. She's freaking out, and rightfully so. A partial transcript of what she's saying. Only normal citizens are suffering. The government does not care about us. We can't buy medicine with money. We can't go to the hospitals with money, and so on and so forth. So that's a very ominous sign, in my opinion. Here we are at the last one. Iran reports 9 COVID virus-linked deaths as WHO warns number of cases outside China won't stay low for very long. And I'm just going to hit the update here. Talk about a spike in deaths. Iran is now reporting 9 deaths after shocking the world by revealing that 2 Chinese nationals infected with the virus had died in the city of Homs earlier this week. I don't know if that's right as far as the pronunciation there. The Iranian regime has reportedly imposed a China-style crackdown on Homs, deploying military and crowd control police across the city. And this is just the latest sign that cases and deaths outside of China are accelerating. Yeah, that was it. I mean, there's lots more I could cover, but this video's already gone almost a whole hour. Anyway, I thought I'd share these things with you because we really do need to lose our faith in these institutions completely and never allow them to be resurrected. Because when they are, it is to the detriment of not them, but the average, everyday, ordinary citizen, and not those who make the decisions in these institutions, or work in them for that matter. Which is why I continually tell you, kill the state, live free.